Good afternoon. Welcome to the Chicago Money Show. We help you get informed, feel engaged, and have fun with your finances. I am your host, Bridget Sullivan Mermel, and I own a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago. Today, our guest is Ed Fulbright. He has lived in Chicago, has family in Chicago, and visits regularly. Ed's the chairman and CEO of two firms, Fulbright and Fulbright, CPA, PA, and Fulbright Financial Consulting. Both firms are focused on getting your money to give you a better return on your life. He's the host and producer of Mastering Your Money radio show every Sunday evening at 6 p.m. on 90.7 FM in Dury, North Carolina, and through the internet at WNCU.org. Since 1986, Ed's taught clients to have a choice of working or not. He is a 20-plus year veteran of the financial services industry and a certified public accountant, CPA, holding the Personal Financial Specialist PFS designation. Today, he's discussing with us minority wealth keys. And we're taking your calls. If you're watching this live, call the number on the screen and give us a good question. Ed, the stats are pretty staggering. While things for minorities have improved over time, there's still a wide wealth gap. The median wealth for a white family was around $188,000 in 2019 compared to $24,000 for Black families and $36,000 for Latino families. And this is according to a Federal Reserve study. And Blacks and Latinos with a bachelor's degree earn like $12,000 a year less than whites, but all is not lost. One McKinsey study looked at how closing the wealth gap would help our economy, and the impact would be enormous. So what's your number one suggestion to help your finances if you're a minority?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on the show. And what my concern is typically, how do you know whether or not you are underpaid? Because typically for most of us, what we earn is how we power our financial engine. So the money we bring in makes everything work. But one of the things, and we'll talk a little bit about how you find out if you're really being underpaid, is that there's really 7 sources of income that we want people to think about. And one of them is earnings. In fact, I make that the number one. The other 6 are interest earnings, dividends, capital gains, rental income, business income, and royalty. I think I got 7 there.
Yeah, okay.
And so, but right now, let's just focus on what your salary is. And there's really only 2 ways, and I can suggest that your viewers can check out salary.com and put their occupation in there. They can also check out industry website for whatever their profession is, or professional websites. But there's also the idea of you doing interviews and finding out if someone offers you a lot more than what you're currently making it. You could use that as an opportunity to negotiate with your employer, or you could just decide to move on. And that can create great opportunities for you. And that's what I really would like all your listeners or viewers to really be ready to take on and, give it some thought, or be brave enough. That's typically, people get comfortable in jobs.
Right.
And sometimes you have to be willing to see if there's some other opportunities out there that will help you to move forward in your life, because it is your life.
Yeah, it is your life. And you have to, it seems like with compensation, most often, if you want to increase your compensation you have to take action, usually.
Yes.
Like some sort of action. And that doesn't mean you have to jump ship or do any or be drastic. But a lot of times it means getting more schooling, or it could mean just asking your boss for raise. What about that?
Yeah.
How do you approach that subject? I mean, it's fraught because everybody's
yeah,
anxious
and
about it. Your boss doesn't feel any better about it than you do, probably. You know, so.
And I would probably ask them, but I'd probably phrase it instead of saying, "Hey, what do I have to do to get a raise?" I'd probably phrase it, "Hey, I'd like to make more money. What do I have to do in order to make additional money?"
Yeah.
Because I've seen report that X amount of dollars are available in similar jobs, and I'm, whatever that number is below that. So I'm trying to see if we can be competitive. Now, you also have to, at that point in time, you need to shut up. Let your boss talk,
right,
and just listen. Don't get upset. Just listen. And the reason why I'm saying just listen is because you might discover something incredible. One time I found out that somebody said, "Well, I didn't know you really wanted a raise." And, that I said, "Well, let me clear that up in your mind. I do." But, people will do what they believe you will accept. And if you let them know that you are willing to do extra or do what you need to do to get it, because sometimes people are just doing whatever the bare minimum is, and that could be hurting their situation. Because, I've seen when we also do taxes, and I was reviewing this guy's tax return, and I mean, not tax return, but his W-2. And I noticed from one year to the other, it jumped like $10,000, and he was working for the government. So normally you don't get big raises,
right?
But you know what he answered? "I finally decided to do what I had to do, and they gave me the raise that I did." And after that, he started making more and more compensation. And for him, it turned out wonderfully because he has a defined benefit plan at his work. So that gets him to have a bigger retirement. And so he ended up retiring about 5 years later, and he started to have a very nice retirement income.
So if you're going to talk to your boss about this, how do you prepare? Do you set up a meeting ahead of time? Do you write it all out? Or do you just, you're putting something in the microwave? Do you mention it over your shoulder while they're grabbing some water or something? How do you do it?
What I would probably say, it depends on how comfortable you feel. You could do it while you're doing something in the microwave, but you need to be prepared for what type of response you get. And you also should know how your boss reacts. If compensation questions can be sensitive.
Yeah,
so
they are, usually,
I want
not always.
people to do it in an environment that they feel comfortable and their boss would feel comfortable too.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to get a positive reaction.
Right. You're not trying to make them mad, actually. You're trying to get them to do what you want.
You're trying to ultimately, you're hoping that you get a raise or get on the path to getting a bigger than normal raise.
Right. Yeah, good point. Okay, so let's move on to some other topics. So
Sure.
Let's say you've got your raise and now you're saving some money. What about an emergency fund? What do you recommend in that regard?
Well, the first thing that I would say is if you're doing an emergency fund, I would take this principle called pay yourself first.
Right.
And some people get real fancy and have PYF, as one of the things. Pay yourself. Yeah, I know. I'm like, okay, pay yourself first. Okay,
Right.
And the one reason why I want to talk about that is because if you don't pay yourself first, you won't be able to set money aside
Right.
for you to be in charge of your life. And I like to be in charge of my life. I don't know. Do you, Bridget?
I do. I like being in charge of my life. And with my finances, saving has been a big part of that.
Yeah. And if you're able to save, you can then accomplish the goal of emergency. The big thing about pay yourself first is then a lot of times you have money in retirement account or your employer may match those money. I encourage people to do that because, if there's a match and you're not taking advantage of it, you're actually allowing your employer to get over it.
I believe we've got a caller. So let's hear what the caller has to say. If you can give us your first name and the neighborhood you're calling from, that'd be great.
Yeah. Hey, Bridget. This is William. I recently retired, and I have a pension, I have a 401k, and I'm a year away from Social Security. Is there an order that you think I should start drawing from those different funds of money?
Great. Ed, do you want to tackle this?
Sure. If you can manage without Social Security for that year that you're away, I would wait because that can be a big advantage by waiting. I don't know. Are you 64 or are you 62 or 67?
Yeah,
okay.
let's assume you're 64.
Well, reason why I was asking those points is because if you're close to 62, you're going to be getting roughly about 70% of what your money is at this time. Now, and I mean full Social Security money. And usually that's going to be at age 67. So if you're closer to 67, you're going to get paid more. And then if you can wait after 67, if you happen to make it to 70, you will get your maximum Social Security, or you will basically get 8% more than full Social Security each year you wait after Social Security. So at 67, you wait 3 more years to 70, you can even get more. So that's 24%. So that can be pretty powerful because I'm noticing that with some clients that have waited till 70, they have pretty big pensions. I mean, not pensions, but Social Security payments. And that's pretty amazing, to be honest with you. You imagine getting a $30,000 or $40,000 a year Social Security check, and it's working out real well.
Well, and the other thing about waiting to take Social Security if your health is good is that it's guaranteed 8% a year return, which is not, you can't get that anywhere else. So you compare that to how much your pension is going to go up if you wait to take that. And those are the factors that you want to look at. And
you want to weigh those things, and you can take advantage of those.
Right. And the other thing I would have to say is that a lot of times what we call it, at my firm, we call it withdrawal strategy. And a lot of withdrawal strategy is motivated by taxes. So you want to, if you've got some money that you're not going to pay as much tax on, that's more attractive, and you put off taking money out of your 401k as long as you can, or make some strategic withdrawals during the tax strategy. We're good. And luckily we've got another call before I totally nerd out on everybody. If the new caller can give us your first name and your neighborhood you're calling from.
Hi, this is Leslie. I'm in the Humboldt Park area.
Hey, Leslie, go for your question.
Well, actually, I know you've moved on slightly, but I wanted to make a point about the pay yourself first concept. Um, you know, for someone who's in the brackets that you're talking about, the lower brackets, I found that also you pay yourself first, but also if you do it through automatic deposit where you don't see it happening, you get used to
Yes.
what
Yeah.
your check looks like, you're saving, and you end up budgeting without being really conscious of it, and it helps a lot.
Thanks so much for that suggestion. Leslie, really appreciate it. I know I totally agree. I don't know, Ed, if you've got a
Yeah,
take on
I
that.
agree 100%
Yeah.
because you do better if you never see it.
Yeah,
Then if it gets into your account, you might want to spend it.
yeah. And if you get a raise, then you've got a lot of time. Like then you have a good time to make something automatic. So as you might get a
Yes.
raise and say, okay, I'm going to save half of that, or I'm going to save a quarter of that, and then I'll spend the rest. And so it's a good time, and I'm going to make it automatic. And so
Right.
that's a really great time to do it, is when you got a raise. Okay, so let's go on to buying a home. Should that be everybody's goal? What do you think, Ed?
Everybody, well, if you're going to be in an area for a reasonable period of time, like more than 5 years or 5 years or longer, I would encourage you to buy a house because that creates typically an opportunity for you to build wealth. And if we
Right.
look at minorities, the reason why a lot of them are African Americans, Hispanics, if they own a home, they typically are able to build wealth a bit more.
Yeah.
And so home ownership typically ends up being a key so that they can build greater wealth.
What about getting? So then you're going to get a bank involved. Obviously, you're often with getting a mortgage. Do you have any suggestions on that are specific to minorities about banking? Because I know that like the research shows that there's not it's more difficult to have banking relationships, or there's a gap
Yeah.
there. What are your thoughts there?
Well, you have to have a banking relationship, and it can be somewhat difficult. The first thing I would probably tell anybody is that they need to find out what their credit score is. And so, and if it's below 600, then you got some work to do. If it's above 700, then you're probably in reasonably decent shape to look at buying a home.
Okay. What about down payment? How much do you recommend there?
Well, the first house typically is a greater challenge. And the reason why is that you typically, if you're young, you haven't had time to accumulate a lot of money. So what I would do is see if you can get a home under FHA. If you are a military person, I would try to do under the VA benefit if you can do that. So lower the better. Now, if you happen to be fortunate and have money where you can put 20% down, that's great. But that's probably your second home,
Okay.
maybe your third. So, but the real issue is that you need to take advantage of that opportunity because homes grow in wealth. I know here in North Carolina, they've been growing pretty rapidly. And I would assume in Chicago, they're doing similar. And it's a great force of building wealth. And if you're trying to move on or upgrade your home, that could create additional opportunities for you.
Okay, great. Now I want to go over some viewer questions. So we got some questions that were sent in to ask at ChicagoMoneyShow.com. So the first one is, as a young Black couple in our 20s, one's in their 20s, the one's in their 30s, how should we begin planning for retirement?
Well, I would first start by taking advantage of my employer's retirement plan. Mm-hmm. Usually, most employers are doing 4% or so. So if you at least match it 4 or 6%, you could start saving 10%. Now, the only downside to that is that if you don't stay with your employer a long term, some of that money may need to be returned to them, but who knows? I know a lot of people who stay a lot longer than they have because they said they didn't participate because they thought they were only going to stay 3 years. And 10 years later, they're still there. So yes.
We've got another call. So, caller, first name and your neighborhood.
Oh, this is Rob. I'm calling from Pilsen. I just wonder if you can give tips on getting rid of credit card debt.
Oh, great.
Credit card debt.
Thanks, Rob. What are your thoughts?
Thank you.
Yeah. Ed, what are your thoughts on eliminating credit card debt? Yeah.
Well, if you have credit card debt, what I would recommend is that you take the credit card with the highest interest rate and start making a lot higher payment on that particular one.
Okay.
Now, always make sure you do your minimum payment. Now, if you need a psychological boost, like some people need, I've got to pay off one credit card, maybe taking the one with the lowest balance might help you psychologically, but mathematically, the ones with the higher interest rate and the larger balances probably should be the one you tackle first. But, sometimes it's a game and we have to convince ourselves we can do it.
So let's go back to the contributing to your 401k. And
yes.
it sounded like you've seen people that are reluctant to contribute to the 401k because of what they call vesting, or
yes.
Like when you get the employer match. And you're saying, don't worry about it. Like, unless you have plans to quit. Yeah, just go for it. Okay. Here's another.
Because you might stay there long enough to get the full amount, and you can't go back and get those.
Right. And, okay, so next question. The other thing is that I've never seen anybody have to write a check back to their employer. It's just that when you transfer the money to your next employer, some of that vesting might not, you don't lose any money that you put in unless the investments went down. But the amount that you got from vesting might not be as high. Okay, next one. We're in our 40s. We started investing late. Is there any way to make up for lost time?
Sure, contribute more. or you can take more risk. And that is always the challenge that everybody runs into. I've never seen a person volunteer to lose money.
Right.
And so, but that's exactly what you're doing when you take higher equity exposure. Now, you can take smart risks. If you hear everything, there's this new virus out there that's going to contaminate the world, then maybe you want to cut back on your exposure. Wow, well, I wish I was that genius. But anyway, you may want to take advantage of opportunities as you see things changing. Like if you had cash on the sideline back in February, April of 2020, if you were brave enough, you could have put that money to work before the end of the month, and you could have made a pretty good haul on that money.
Okay, great. So here's another question we got. At this point, we're not focused on retirement planning or investing. We're trying to figure out how to afford to buy a house and put our kids through college. Can a financial advisor help?
Well, that's possible. They can if you're willing to listen. And as I tell people, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to crack jokes. I'm just telling you what the cold hard fact.
Yeah.
The point that I'm trying to make is that you've gotten to where you are. And really, to be honest with you, I would probably encourage you to focus on retirement and possibly saving for the kid college. But also having a house could be a nice wealth built. The point that I'm trying to make is that you have the opportunity to start to control. If you can start to save for your kids when they're first born, you can have an opportunity to be able to fund it. The big question always is that you can't save for you can't borrow money to fund your retirement.
Right.
But you can borrow money to fund your kid college. And so you just have to kind of weigh the two and how you feel and have open discussions with your kid.
Yeah, that brings up another point, is how do you recommend handling kids with money?
What I do is I try to give them allowances can be used as educational tools. Mm-hmm. And so if you give them some form of money and you tell them what you're giving them this money for, like this money is if you needed candy or you needed other stuff, your basic living will be taken care of. But if you need something special, this is what this money's for. If you need certain things, you may want to take that out. And so it teaches them the ability to save for certain items that they may want, or maybe they need to get themselves a job. Right. And that's the way most kids thought.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Okay, so next we got a bunch of questions, and we just have about a minute left about finding a financial advisor. So are there bilingual financial advisors? I feel like an African American advisor would be better. Can you get with or find a financial advisor if you don't have too much, if you're not wealthy? Can you do financial planning on your own? What are your thoughts there?
You can. You can do it on your own if you're willing to do reading and educate yourself. But I would also encourage them to at least be willing to periodically see a financial advisor to see if you're doing it right. If you are, some people, it takes time to do this. And somebody who does it for more than one person might be able to tell you a lot more and make your life a lot easier. And that's where the value that a financial advisor comes in and can demonstrate to you what the difference is. And you should be able to notice that very quickly by getting your question.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ed Fulbright, for being a guest on the Chicago Money Show today. My name is Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I own a family financial planning firm in Chicago. If you've got questions on this episode or for future episodes, please email us at ask@chicagomoneyshow.com. Thank you for watching.